Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. I told you on this channel sometimes we're going to throw in a few twists and turns here and there just to get you thinking. And while I'm out here walking, I've had something I was going to bring up and discuss a while ago. And it just, today, after seeing the amazing, beautiful day I've had in this beautiful park and running into and meeting just an incredible being in which I got to commune with a little bit. Just having the opportunity to ponder a few things. I want to talk about mankind. You see, I want to talk about the selective history that we choose to narrate and officiate to all people, and why I feel like that may actually not be accurate. You see, on this journey, I've been blessed to have visited a lot of these ancient sites, and the pyramids, and Karnak, and the Serapeum of Seraphim, and Alexandria, and Ayutthaya, and Angkor Wat, and Athens, and all of the sites in Athens, as well as I'll be going to Machu Picchu, and I'm sure there are others. And when I've gone to these places, I've always had the thought of, I know I have a specific understanding or belief in what I think is going on, but I want to go to these sites and keep an open mind. And I really want to view these sites and decide whether I actually believe that it is possible, that we, that there were a version of us in the past who were much less technologically advanced, with much less of a tool set that could have created these things. So this is a beautiful little sculpture in the park here. And on my studies, I've got to tell you the answer to the question is no. I don't believe the narrative. Now you're going to ask, well, what would be the benefit of keeping the narrative the way it is? Well, I'm explaining this why, and when I do, it might make some sense, and then we're going to go into some alternate ideology or theories around that. So to begin with, why would the narrative be that, the way it is? Well, the reason why the narrative would be the way it is because it's just like when you begin your spiritual journey. There comes a point where you start to interact with folks and whatnot, and you get this feeling of, you start to question whether, like many times I've questioned, am I really worthy of having these discussions? Am I really worthy of sharing these things? Who am I? And that's a normal human response from an egoic perspective. But you see, when you look at the way that society even now is built and how it interacts, the purpose, much as you start on the spiritual journey, is to essentially get you to play small. It wants to keep you at small ball. It wants to keep you in need. It wants to keep you controlled and confined. And the thing about it is that the historical narrative that we have right now does exactly that. It gives you a starting point, which is nothing, and it gives you a current point, which is where we are from a technological position today, with AI and massive computer systems and data sets and all sorts of information. And the theory of evolution, it creates a scenario where it makes you question a lot of things. It makes you question, like, am I just an accident? Are we just here by accident? What's the purpose of life? And it keeps you asking and answering these same things over and over and over again, so that you stop questioning things and looking inside for answers, you see? the way it stands right now, we've already shown that there have been hominids, humans, on this planet for, they think now, over almost 200,000 years. We actually can see that humans actually congregated in cities now that already far exceed the narrative. The narrative being, maybe 6,000 years ago, we're seeing now through some of these new discoveries that there's actually a likelihood that we've had civilizations here for almost 12,000 years. Well, here's what's interesting about that. We also scientifically have shown that 12,000 years ago, there was a cataclysm on the planet called the Younger Dryas, and that this cataclysm essentially caused great floods. If you're of any type of religion, that might sound familiar, and essentially wiped out the entire planet. When we don't know what existed on the planet before then, and a massive cataclysm like that would really prevent us from, finding a lot of things necessarily that potentially existed at that time. So, why do I bring all that up? Well, let me ask you this question. The narrative is currently we're an accident. We evolved from some primordial soup and we've gotten to where we are now. However, it only took us 125 years to get from a horse and a buggy to AI. And it is, we're told that it takes that long for a society to advance. Well, if you understand that the planet is millions of years old, and then even if you look at, the planetary cycles that we have now started to discover, there have actually been 4 other periods in the evolution of our planet which could have created the perfect environment that we have right now to sustain life. And in those other 3 periods, why is it so difficult to believe that man could have existed, and in that man could have become very technologically advanced? Now, you're going to ask, why is this important? Well, I'm going to tell you why it's important. Because we're going to discover this potentially in years to come. And because the current narrative lacks many answers, yet archaeology, it just doesn't want to evolve. It doesn't want to think outside of the box. You see, we've become very limited in how we've answered a lot of things. And even when I was in Egypt, the archaeologists there told me, well, it's just the mysteries of the pyramid. And, I'm sorry, but that doesn't, for someone like me, who thinks outside of the box, who's analytical, who understands the simulation differently, that doesn't make any logical sense. And to be honest with you, we've had this conversation with AI. It doesn't make sense to AI either. But let me throw you a narrative that does make some sense. You see, again, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of people from different professions, different expertises, from science, from scientists to astronomers to doctors, because I'm curious about a lot of things in our current iteration. And as I mentioned many times before, on the spiritual journey, there are a lot of spiritual aspects that I'm presented with, which I've asked to see the science or the psychology around it, and by being directed to certain podcasts and whatnot, it actually gives me a lot of answers. And on the last podcast, there was that I listened to, was an astronomer, and he was talking about the James Webb Telescope and how they can see even further into space than the Hubble, and how they've already started to using the first law of thermodynamics, how they've tried to discover whether there's a possibility of other civilizations on other planets. And essentially what the first law of thermodynamics is for every amount of energy that goes into something, an equal amount of energy must come out, and that energy comes out in terms of heat. So what they're doing is they're using different lights like infrared to see if they can see heat signatures on other planets that would indicate that there is life on other planets. However, I'm going to throw you an alternative, something to consider, something I think is important to consider, especially given all the information that we're being shown and fed now. You see, if we got to this point in a past history, let's assume that we have been highly technologically advanced in the past. Why would we assume that? Well, we've got a lot of ancient sites that we can not answer how they were built, and they definitely, we know, we can argue whether they were built with manpower and tools or technology. And a lot of the things we can't even do today with our technology. So to assume that some people just figured out how to do certain things with their hands doesn't really feel logical or likely. Or else we would be able to do the same thing now. And why is it that a species such as ours, beings such as ours, consciousness such as ours, that is so creative and has such an ability to create things and change our environment, that if we existed before, why we wouldn't have done these things all in the past? Maybe it's just lost technology, or maybe it's another civilization. Now think about it from this aspect. The reason I brought up the first law of thermodynamics is important in this part of the next discussion, which is we're also starting to see a lot of military pilots and whatnot come out and talk about how they've tracked UFOs, and then these UFOs go into the ocean. Now, what's interesting about that is this. We've only searched about and discovered about 5% of our ocean. We keep looking outside. We don't look inside. Now, if we were an advanced civilization, we would understand a lot of things that we understand now. And we would also understand certain things that are certainties, which is things that are used to create fear in you right now. What are those? Like anomalies, asteroids that strike the Earth and create cataclysms that wipe out the entire planet. Now, from a logical perspective, consider this. We keep thinking that as we get technologically advanced, we're going to leave and go to another planet. And maybe we did that, and maybe we have done that, or maybe we will do that. But let me throw something out at you that might also be a narrative that I don't think it's not been discussed. As we become more technologically advanced and are able to, go into space, which is a very hazardous place, where our technology is also going to evolve to allow us to be able to discover the depths of the ocean in a greater manner as well. What if, this is important, what if we got to a point in our past where we were so technologically advanced, we saw an impending cataclysm coming. And so instead of just trying to leave the planet, which would be much more difficult because we would only be able to take a small amount of the populace, what if we decided to build cities underwater? Now, let's not get too carried away with the whole science fiction thing. All these aspects are not far out of our ability in technology currently. I mean, we can, water is just a couple of molecules, 2 hydrogen and an oxygen. We can already extract oxygen from water. So even now, the ability to create oxygen is not a difficult thing to do for us. We can do it. It's expensive, but we can do it. As technology continues to advance, we'll do it very much more readily and much more cheaply. So what if, an ancient society, highly technologically advanced, of humans, again, we're going to go out of the realm of aliens, let's go to the realm of humans. What if we saw this impending cataclysm and we decided to build cities underwater? Because by building these cities underwater, we could take a much bigger majority of the population and save them from this impending cataclysm. Now, why do you say underwater? Well, underwater, one issue, the issue of thermodynamics, the first law, we automatically solve. If we have a heat source or a power generating source that produces a lot of heat, well, guess what? The waters of the ocean would immediately cool it down, so we would have now discovered how to create a power source that doesn't require us to cool it. It's just going to be cooled naturally. We already know how to create oxygen. And why underwater? Well, when the cataclysm hits the planet and it wipes out all of the fauna and animals and whatnot, and people for that matter, on the continents, the underwater isn't going to be affected in the same manner. In fact, think about it from this aspect. By moving a city underwater, you actually reduce the ability for a cataclysm to destroy your civilization, because now this asteroid would not only have to just hit the planet, it would have to hit the ocean, and then, depending on how deep you were, hit your structure under the ocean. Now, the chances of that happening are astronomical. Again, just from a mathematical perspective, it's almost impossible. So you could actually move an entire civilization underwater, and you would protect yourself from the constant cataclysms that occur on the Earth. Now, I'm going to bring up another thing to consider. Let's assume that happened. Just a little thought experiment. Let's assume that we moved our civilization underwater in the past. We were highly technologically advanced. Maybe 12,000 years ago, we saw this event occurring. And so we moved everything under, and the event happened. And so we stayed under, and we waited for the planet to change and evolve back to where potentially we'd think maybe we could kind of start moving things back onto the solid ground again. But when we got to that point where we started to go up, we realized, holy cow, some of the people that we weren't able to bring down, they survived. And when they survived, they had children, and those children had children. And these are us, and now they're evolving in a regular manner. See where I'm going with this? Would we come up and greet them? Or would we recognize that they were now kind of having to start from scratch, and that they might be locked in ego because they were in a survival mode, and that being locked in ego and being locked in survival mode, they might view us as scary and as a threat. And that maybe, because we are sustained underwater, it makes more sense. Maybe it makes more sense for us to just let them evolve and us to stay where we're at, to the point where they can evolve, that they could meet us and greet us. See, this is no different than this discussion about aliens and whether aliens would want to come and meet us if they were from another planet. It would be the same thing. They would just be our brothers and sisters from a past civilization, with better technology, higher technology, existing in a different place that don't feel like coming and meeting us right now would be to anyone's advantage, until we start to evolve a little bit more spiritually and understand who we are, why we're here, and we show the propensity to not want to destroy each other, or those that we would feel like are against us. You see, again, these are all aspects of free will that when you take this journey, you understand free will is a universal rule. And the only way that your free will can be impeded is if you choose to give your free will up. So there you go. That's a theory I'm not sure if anyone's thought about. You see, instead of looking outside of us, instead of looking out into outer space to answer, is that where we came from? Maybe the answer's been here the whole time. Maybe it's just us, and it's always been us. It doesn't have to be aliens. And you know what? It is logical and plausible that if we have evolved to this far in 120 years technologically, that if we were here before a massive event that destroyed the surface of the earth, why would it, and we already know that we've been here, that humans in some form have been here for almost 200,000 years, why is it so hard to believe that we could not have gotten this far or further technologically, and that we didn't go anywhere? We just moved ourselves to a place that made a lot more sense for us to be, based on the cycles of the planet, the cataclysmic cycles of the planet. What say you? How do you feel about that? You see, I'm open to all ideas here. This doesn't have to be aliens. It doesn't have to be that the current narrative that we have just come from some primordial soup. can be all things. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. As always, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I am truly grateful. Until I talk to you again, peace, love, light. I hope you have the most amazing day.